trusted place for your fixed deposits. Valuable FD, 10.25% for 15 months, 11% for 24 months. Valuable FD, the symbol of stability.
Good evening and a very warm welcome to Face to Face, where we bring to you conversations that matter, deep, thoughtful, and of course relevant to our times. Tonight we will be focusing on a question that resonates with many Sri Lankan families as well as young adults alike. The delicate balance between cultural expectations as well as personal identity. How do our youth navigate the pressures of tradition while also discovering who they are meant to be? To help us unpack this complex dilemma, I'm honoured to welcome a distinguished expert, Professor Piyanjali de Zoysa, Senior Professor at the Faculty of Medicine, University of Colombo, and Clinical Psychologist. Professor, thank you very much for joining us tonight and for sharing your insights on this matter with us. Professor, now in your psychiatric practice, you must be seeing a lot of young people who are struggling under the weight of these cultural as well as traditional pressures. Can you start off by talking to us about how these pressures manifest themselves in these children's lives? And do we see it in anxiety, depression, or other mental health concerns among our Sri Lankan youth?
Okay, so Theruni, if you were looking at youth, if you look at the age group that we refer to, usually it's older adolescents to late 20s. That's the these definitions vary, but if you were to think of 15 to 29 kind of a thing, the reason why we take it is that as youth is because that's the time when people make life decisions, isn't it? Which A-level subjects to go to, about their sexual orientation, marriage, career. So this is a very pivotal, important time frame in any human being's life. So having a good foundation so that a young person can make appropriate decisions which can impact their entire life is so important. So in my practice and my work as a clinical psychologist, we have seen that, of course, the positive angle of it, Theruni, is that more young people are aware of mental health issues, which is a positive, and adults, their parents, caregivers, also seems to be more. They know, because programs such as these, they kind of know. But unfortunately, we have seen as a worldwide trend, Theruni, there is an increase in mental health issues, mental health problems that youth are facing. Not only youth, adults, human population per se. So though our world is technologically advanced, economically developed, whatnot, the happiness levels of individuals aren't that great. So because of that, we do see more and more youth coming to us for help. From them coming to help is a good thing, rather than staying at home unhappy. But it is also a matter of concern because our younger generation is then not that well, isn't it? Yeah.
Now, adolescence and early adulthood is supposed to be a time of exploration, right, Professor? And you're supposed to understand what you want in life and to explore these brand new things that you've always wanted to try. But for some reason, unfortunately, the youth, even our country or maybe even around the world, tend to be sent down or compelled to follow this narrow and already predefined path in life for them. From a psychological perspective, Professor, how does this kind of sustained pressure affect them in the long run in life?
Yeah, I mean, the pressure is massive there. We have to be very open and talk about this because, whoever the audience who's listening to this program then can make informed decisions when they relate to youth in their life. So now if you look at it, when I was younger, we had a very minimal number of professions we could get into, isn't it? And we went to university, we did this course, we go out and that's it. But now within a span of 20-30 years, the job market is very varied. There are the standard professions like law, medicine, engineering, IT, accountancy, but there are much more out there. Even things that me as an adult would know, the younger people will know.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the care givers of these young people might not know, or even if they do know, they don't value these younger professions that are available, new professions. So what we see very much, one of the main issues I think we need to really stress on, are parents forcing their children to do certain established professions, which the child might have no aptitude or less aptitude and less interest. Now recently I was reading a PhD thesis submitted for evaluation to me from a Indian university, and it was on engineering students, whether their aptitude and interest determine their career success in a given engineering specialty. And it was very clear that even if somebody had aptitude for engineering sciences, if the interest was not there, their grades were very much lesser. And reversely, what they found was a student whose aptitude, that means the inherent skill and the potential, was average. But if they loved engineering, really loved it, they had better marks, therefore better career success, therefore more life. So it's really important that parents make sure that the child get into a profession or a career pathway that aligns with the interest of the child, not the interest of the parent or the society they are in. That's such an important message. Teruni.
So how do these kind of pressures manifest themselves in our lives in the form of different illnesses? How does it work?
So not all youth would get a mental health disorder or what we call mental health problem or a mental illness, because now in the diagnosis of mental illnesses we have different classification systems, and these systems say, well, if you have a minimum number of criteria, then we can say you have a mental illness. Now say the most common one would be depressive disorder or depression. Then if there's a psychologist, if I get a person coming to me, I will, through my talk, I would see what do they tell me. And in that assessment, I would see, well, do they meet the minimum criteria where I can say, you have a depressive disorder.
Like ticking the boxes out.
Absolutely. So they would say, I have lost pleasure in my previous pleasurable activities. My mood has been more low than up. I feel hopeless. I feel helpless. I can't concentrate. So minimum number, we would say, okay, you have a disorder. But the thing is, Teruni, a lot of people might not meet the minimum criteria, but they are having hopelessness, helplessness. So then we don't say they have a mental illness, but they're not functioning either. So therefore, we do get in our clinical practice people who have mental health problems, but we have a whole bunch out there who find themselves in circumstances that they would rather not be in, and who are not ill yet, but who might get there, and who are currently distressed. So that is the kind of a map that we have of the mental health landscape.
We often frame this situation as a generational gap, that there's an issue that's there between our parents and their children, or our grandparents and their children who are our parents. But is it more accurate to see this as a clash between the traditional cultural frameworks that we have and the technological advancement that we're now experiencing in this world, Professor?
I think the technology, now say I'm in my 50s and you are in your 20s, isn't it? So when I was in my 20s, we didn't have emails. You know, we didn't have mobile phones. We didn't have internet. So only way somebody could contact me is through a letter. Or a land phone call, and that also the parents might pick the phone call up and we won't get it. So it was a very simple life, isn't it? We went to school, and while going to school, if I had an accident, nobody would know. There was no phone where my parents can call me. Very simple. We eat what is given. We don't know what is eaten in the other house or in the USA. So it's very simple. But now the young people know everything what's happening. They know what's happening in Gaza. They know Ukraine. They protest here for Ukraine or Gaza or whatever. So it's a huge load of information youth have, not only around their own tiny lives, but in their larger village, their country, their region, the world, and what is happening to planet Earth climate-wise, for example. And they are bombarded, and they're affected, and they're worried. Whilst when I was younger, I'm sure all of these things happen. I didn't know. I only knew what was happening in my road and who was going to play cricket with me in the afternoon, and what am I going to do during August holidays. I didn't know what was happening in my school friends' August holidays because there was no mobile phone to call and ask.
Only after the holidays you'll get to know.
Yeah. And that's it. Then but otherwise, now there's no WhatsApp status updates. There's nothing. So life is nice and simple because you didn't know much. So that is the huge overload of information. And what are we going to do about that? Because that's now the world has come to that.
So would you say that now it's a combined factor of both the generational gap and the technological factor? Or?
I feel that technological is a huge thing and it's inevitable because, I'm sure, it was very interesting, Theruni, I was reading this book from Roman times, not that I know how to read that language, but they're translated. And in this Roman document, one of the Caesars in Rome says, our younger generation is worse than what we were like. So even during those centuries ago, same conversation, and they must have had their gladiators for the issues. But here now we have social media the issue. So I think it is there every generation, but here it's an unprecedented amount of information. Even in the Roman times, they might know what's happening in Egypt, but that's all. But here the whole world and people are feeling helpless, isn't it? So, so there is a more than generational gap. There is a generational gap because my values will be quite different to my child's values, and my child's values are fed by social media. And therefore, me as a parent, not only have I got to face my child bringing up notions that I'm unfamiliar with, but also a whole bunch of notions behind the child, whom the child is being influenced by. So what am I going to do then? You're quite helpless. Isn't it?
I want to now focus on a more gendered perspective to this entire topic. Well, psychiatric research shows that men and women deal with stress or experience stress in two different ways. And in the Sri Lankan context, usually women tend to be more pressured regarding marriage, modesty, while young men tend to face pressure regarding financial stability. That's the kind of situation that we see mostly in Sri Lanka. How do these pressures affect the young men and women when it comes to mental health?
I feel, Theruni, it certainly affects, but it's not conscious. It's very unconscious, but it affects. So, for example, what we have seen is that in certain disciplines, we have more women coming into university to do their undergraduate degree than boys.
Yes.
So we would expect more women going in to do postgraduate studies and taking up key administrative roles because there are, of course, more women coming in.
Yes.
But as we go along, we see women drop out.
In the workforce, especially.
Yeah. And then if you see sometimes it's all men. I'm sure the men do an excellent job. It's not the point. What we're saying is even if a woman wants to, the society tells them, but why are you doing that? Let your husband get on with life. He will bring the money home. You peg down a bit. Maybe not give up the job. That might be not the talk now. It was a talk maybe one generation ago. You peg down a bit. And a woman who might want to do it, that's okay, that's her decision. But a woman who don't want to do it might feel very pressurized that her full potential is not realized because of the society she lives in. Similarly for a man. So for example, in the profession of psychology, there are more women than men. And the reason what we find is, it's a worldwide trend, by the way. The reason is in postgraduate psychology programming, where you have to do a postgraduate in psychology to be a psychologist, a lot of men need to stabilize themselves by getting money. They can't afford to study as well. So they don't go in to become a psychologist. They change fields after their undergraduate degree in psychology.
Right.
Where they can get a job because there's a pressure to earn, to have your car, have a piece of land, have a house, like that. So they might be doing things that they don't want to do. But these are huge societal things, of course. How are you going? Because then the entire society has to change, no? To accommodate changes, if you want changes to come.
Well, culture and tradition are supposed to be protective factors, more of a cushioning factor, something that would keep us grounded in life. But if it comes to a point where it suffocates us and where it restricts our individuality, it can become a risk factor, which is quite unfortunate. But Professor, from your psychological perspective, how do you think the youth can balance these two competing influences, if I may say, without feeling like they're betraying their roots or themselves in the process?
So, Taruni, if you look at what culture means, in Sinhala it's called Sanskritiya, it's a set of beliefs, behaviors, practices that a bunch of people, a framework, a bunch of people live by. So that's a collective. So for example, we are very familiar with the Japanese culture. They're so different, right?
Yes.
It's so beautiful, they're different. That is very distinct because of their dress, the kimono, the sushi, the chopsticks, the cherry blossoms. So that's a culture. We also have our culture. Now, what happens is culture has a very positive role of grounding us. It gives us, it grounds us. For example, if you look at the Indians, whichever country they're in, they would go and put a little bindi here. They would worship Lord Ganesha. They might have been born second generation, third generation in the UK, but they would still go to the temple and venerate Lord Shiva. Why? Because it stabilizes you into something larger. You're part of a larger collective. So therefore, culture is important. However, with time, certain cultural practices can oppress somebody. Like for example, if you take, I was reading about patriarchal societies, and apparently maybe even 2-3 centuries ago, men was given by society the head role in any household. They were the owners of their wife and the children. Owners,
like possession.
Yeah, like commodities. And women and men accepted that, because why? Women were not skilled to go out and do any work. The men were, they were the agriculture, farmlands. But with time, when agriculture started reducing and men were coming into the cities to work, so in Europe, women then had to look after children. Now you could see the dynamics are shifting. Women were given positions. They were also now co-parenting the child, not only the husband now. Then with time, when the factories coming over, women started going as factory workers. Now, if in that context, if there was a man who says, no, you can't go to work, I am your owner, I am your child's owner, now that cultural practice is now outdated. But he's trying to stick to outdated practice, which oppresses the wife, oppresses the children. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, culture is important, but it also evolves over time. Maybe to the positive, maybe to the negative. But positive if it enriches somebody. Negative if it oppresses somebody. So we have to take that decision.
We need to understand where we need to draw the line.
Absolutely, It's not easy to do that, isn't it?
I mean, I feel like there might be an internal pressure when you try to make that decision itself. So that can be quite...
Because you might think, for example, I want to make a decision, but your community might not allow you.
Exactly.
For example, I might have a daughter who wants to become a pilot. But I would love her to be a pilot, but I might be coming from a family, I don't have a daughter who wants to be a pilot, this is the example, who would say, why, how can she be a pilot and all that? So I need to therefore be strong and say, no, that's what my child wants to do. She wants to progress. So we also have to have strength to go beyond certain culture. There's also subcultures also. Now, if you look at our Sri Lankan culture, there's an overall culture, but also subcultures depending on rural, urban living, different ethnicities, different religions. So, I am maybe Sinhala Buddhist, which may be different subculture to another community. So, within my tiny subculture, I will be said to do certain things.
Yes.
But I might be somewhat progressive, and I say, I don't really agree. People might not like me. They'll oppress me. They might shun me. That's the situation. So to stand towards you is not easy. That's where people ultimately give in to social standards.
I'd like to now talk about the role of institutions and our society, Professor. Now, schools and universities can, on one end, either be a protective space where it would actually help the youth identify what they want to be in life. But if the story doesn't go as planned, it can be the exact opposite, something that can be extremely traumatic to them as well. In your opinion, what role should our education system play in safeguarding the mental health of these students who are caught between the cultural pressures as well as the role of finding out who they are in life or discovering their personal identity?
Well, forgive me if I'm offending anybody, but I feel that allowing a young person to find out their own personal identity within most of our education institutions aren't at a level that it should be. Because why? The reason we are very emphasizing on education attainments, Tharuni. How many O-level results, how many people have got 9 A's or whatever number of A's that are there now. So, and some schools even graph it. So it's always attaining, it's achievement. Attaining is nice because you can get into institutions, but finding out what a child wants, allowing the child to understand themselves, what their needs are, to think about life, about the climate change issues, that is not that encouraged in most schools. So therefore, schools have now become a place of attaining certificates and getting awards. However, if schools can be maintained into beautiful spaces where we nurture humans, it can have a long... is it possible for me to share a small story of a student? You know, I was at this school, very progressive school in our country, in Colombo, who invited me to talk about preventing corporal punishment of children. Very progressive because they want to bring a note to it. So there was a young man who came to record the talk. He was not a school student, he was a young man, and he listened to everything while I was saying. Then after my talk, I was going to the car and he kept running behind me and said, he talked in Sinhala, he started it in English, Miss, I want to tell you my story. I said, what is it? He said, you know, I hated school. People in school bullied me. They didn't include me, the children in his class. Teachers always told me, you're useless. And I really hated it. I was very lonely. But in my school bus, there was a teacher who was not my class teacher, who smiled at me, genuinely looking at my eyes. Sometimes she touched my head and said, Puta kohomada. That's all. She said, that is what prompted me to get up in the morning and go to school, that there was somebody out there who was kind to me. And after my O-level, I dropped out of school and learned audiovisual recording because I hated to go to school afterwards. Now I have my own tiny company. That is why I said, please share this story about the importance of kindness by teachers and other adults towards young people, because you might not know, but they need it. So if we can have people really connecting, you don't have to do big things now. In a school setup or education, just say, how are you, Puta? That can go a long way. That's what we need. Because anyway, we have a good education system. We are all products of it. So we can get to the jobs. But the mental health nurturance, I think we need to improve. That is what our youth needs, isn't it?
And that bit of kindness that they might experience could help them make that decision as well. Stand their ground.
We might not realize, you might think it's just a small smile, but it could change somebody's life.
Well, now social media is something that we all are exposed to by this point. Everyone has a phone in their hands. And it also exposes the youth to brand new lifestyles that they may not have for themselves, and also choices that may clash with what their family wants them to choose. So, clinically speaking, Professor, do you think this exposure strengthens identity, or would you say that it worsens anxiety, self-comparison, and the negative aspect of this?
So now if you look at smartphone use, if I just talk a little bit about disorders, now so far for the longest time we had addictions as a mental illness. So we had alcohol, tobacco, whatnot. Recently there's another segment added called behavioral addictions, like gaming behavior, gaming, and then there's gambling. Gambling was also there anyway, but there's now considering smartphone use. It's still not there as a mental illness. It's now called problematic smartphone use. Okay, where youth and adults go in and do social media work. The trends are usually, Theruni, men apparently seem to be more into entertainment and gaming, male gender. Female are more into communication and networking. So they are the ones who are on WhatsApp and texting people and Messenger guys. So what they have seen is that if you use your social media platforms, people who use in a constructive way, they actually benefit from it. So what is constructive? Say I am a university student and I want to learn more about my subject. So if you use YouTube clips on it, or whatever apps, I don't know much about these apps, but whatever, you can really flourish in your academics. But if you go beyond that only, the problem arises. Another way is, say I have friends from my school when I was in my grade 5, I've lost touch. I use Facebook to connect with them. That can give me a great deal of joy. And when I do meet them in next year's school reunion, it's as if time has stopped and we are the same. It gives joy. If we stop at that amount of scrolling, apparently it gives good mental health benefits. But the issue is when we get involved with devices, it makes us addicted to it. We start scrolling beyond what is good for us. That's when the problem arises. And then, of course, comparison sets in. Now, for example, as a psychologist, we have opportunity to know about different people's lives because they come and tell us. Then we sometimes see what they tell us personally is not a beautiful story. But if we see their lives on Facebook, it is the best story. But a person watching that best story doesn't know the actual story. So they compare their life with their best story. And I mean, if you look at us, we put our best photos on social media. We edit it also and put a filter as well. But somebody who sees us, they might be Piyanjali and Taruni having time of their life, but they might not be. So this comparison is a huge problem. So we see people who are saying, oh, within 1 hour I must have 100 likes. We also can get to those states. And if I don't, they feel very unhappy. So comparison is unfortunately like a dark side of human beings. And that can really affect people unless we know the facts and we prevent ourselves from going down that track. But young people even don't know these facts. So they're always constantly comparing what's happening there, what's happening here. I want to go there. The grass is always greener somewhere else. But once they go to that grass, it's not that green. But now you're gone there. What am I going to do? You know?
So when the youth are dealing with social media advancements and this brand new lifestyle like this, from your experience, Professor, how do you see the parents of these youth handling this entire situation?
I think the parents are in quite a situation themselves because some parents might also be like that. You know, one of the things that we tell parents who come and tell please tell my son and daughter not to be on the phone first. We ask the parent, how many hours are you on the phone? And they say, well, I'm also on the phone. So the child learns from the parent. So what we say is, you have to first get your act together as a role model where you also curtail your. Similarly like that, if their child is comparing about how beautiful life in Canada, USA, Australia, wherever Timbuktu is, if the parents are also doing that, if the parents are also venerating another culture but not wanting their child to do it, the child's going to get confused. So what I'm trying to say is, if we want our child to live in a particular healthy way, parents also have to be role models of it first. If we are not role models of it, the child is going to get confused or all the data that's coming out of social media as well as what the parents are saying. Because anyway the children are going to be confused because there's so much of data points coming in. We are also confused. So, but if they have parents who say, well, this is our culture, great, in those cultures also have beautiful things, but let us also do some of our cultural things. These are our family values. But let's consider others too. Then the child feels anchored, Teruni. And that takes a lot of work on the parents' part also. These are not easy things to do. Am I clear?
Yes, definitely. The context has become very complex given these technological advancements. Professor, now, like you mentioned, the family dynamics are very crucial in our lives. Parents, there's a chance that parents might feel threatened when the children make decisions that they don't want the children to make. And this can create a bit of a dilemma, and the reactions that these parents give out can also affect the children in the long run, because they might start worrying, oh, did I offend my parents? Did I do something? Did I break their expectations? And that could affect them negatively as well. What can families do differently in order to reduce these psychiatric risk factors for their children, while also guiding them down the correct path in their lives?
So I feel, Tharuni, the first is parents' mental well-being first. Because if the parent, mother, father, as well as the grandparent, we have extended family also, no? If their mental health is in a good place, they can take wiser decisions and give better guidance to their children. So, for example, if parents are having, say, addictions like alcohol, cannabis, whatever, thinking about curtailing them and preventing it. If the parents are having physical, sexual or violent fights at home and children are witnessing that, go for therapy, get your life sorted. What happens is, when the parents are in a good mental health, the children feel nourished and nurtured. They feel safe. They feel that if they are going against parental wishes, they feel safe to come and tell their parents. So, for example, say if you look at different sexual orientations, if a child feels, well, you know, I'm homosexual, I'm bisexual, some children don't want to tell their parents because they're afraid what the parents would say. But I have seen other children who will say, well, my parents might not be open to it because they come from a different generation, but, you know, they're safe parents. So I could still share it with them. And that's fantastic. So therefore, the first thing is the parents' mental health. So, and we are all in our journey of improving our mental health, you and I both included. And if you do have some, if you are, for example, if you're somewhat violent in your home, or if you're anger prone, if you take certain, work on that first. When you work on it, children feel safe. That's number one. Number two is, now all these issues of conflict between parents usually come in adolescence. So at adolescence, it's a little difficult to get close to a child if the mother and father wasn't close to the child in childhood. Suddenly you can't be like, oh, hugging the child and kissing the child when you're not doing that in childhood. So if you really want to make sure your child, your adolescent, your youth is making good decisions and that you will be part to it, make your relationship with your child in their childhood good, which means not hitting your child, not comparing your child with the other house child, not belittling your child, etc. So then the child feels, yes, I can talk to my parents. They love me. And when then this child grows into adolescence and might, for example, say, fall into bad company. But because they have a good bond with the parents formed in childhood, the parents can still come and sit with the child and talk about the issue. And because the bond is already there, though the child might not like the advice of the parent, they will be still open to it. Then you can influence the child. Yeah, that's how you should work on it. So it has to start from day one of birth of the child.
Also now, Professor, many young people experience guilt when it comes to making certain non-conventional, non-traditional decisions in their life in the process of discovering their identity. And this can be a recurring emotion right throughout their lives. If this guilt is unresolved, Professor, how can it manifest itself in the long run of this life? The child's life.
You know, this guilt issue is very important that we talk about. It's really harnessed in our Sri Lankan culture. Now, there are two words here, guilt and shame. So, now if you look at guilt, so now apparently I was reading this very interesting article. They said that guilt is there mostly in South Asian countries, whilst shame, I hope I got the two terms right or whatever. Shame is there mostly in individualistic Western cultures. So what does shame mean? Shame means a person is ashamed of a behavior they did. Guilt is they don't like themselves, which is much more deeper issue. I hope I'm getting the guilt and shame wrong. If by any chance I'm just switch the two terms, I'm telling the audience. So if a person is shameful, they would say, well, I'm ashamed I lied. A guilt-prone person would be, I'm a bad person. Now, the danger is the guilt one.
Shame lies in the act.
Act. Guilt is a person.
Person itself.
We find that in collectivist cultures, which is like our Asian region, are more guilt prone. Because why? By saying, you're a bad person, because of you, things have gone wrong, not only for our family, but for our community. That's how you keep people intact. Guilt can have a lot of repercussions. While shame, it's just a behavior. You can rectify it. So there's a way out. And we see that more in individualist countries. That doesn't mean that individual cultures don't have mental health issues. They certainly do. But guilt is not a very good sign at all, because it can have long-term people, even in old age. I should not have spoken to my mother, father like that. I should have given my sister more chocolate than I did. Still talking about it because you were said you as a person is bad, rather than your behavior was bad. So parents really need to term their words when they say, not trying, you're a bad girl, but Puta, the way you talk to that child was not nice.
Separate the act from the person.
Yeah, don't personify. That's the way you should talk. That way the child feels, I'm good, but this particular behavior was bad and let me work on it. Yeah.
I feel like it's very important to distinguish the difference between the two, because it can change the trajectory of the life altogether. One final question, Professor. Now, if you were to draw on both your expertise as well as the understanding that you have in Sri Lankan society, what kind of a roadmap would you suggest for youth and their families? How can both these sides take practical steps in their day-to-day lives to strike a proper balance between mental health as well as the cultural expectations that exist within our society?
But that's a big call. But
let's try to cover it.
I'll give you some tips. I feel that because the child is younger and in that sense less powerful in a family or a community, because they're still dependent on elders because of money, whatnot, the real onus in order to make our world a nicer place for children is on the adults. So if adults feel that they have a mental health issue, it doesn't have to be, again, as I said, a mental illness. Not everybody has a mental illness, but we might get it on and off during our lifetime. But if you feel that you have anger management issues, if you have a tendency to your mind to drop down, if you are into addictions, if you have a manipulative tendency, all that, please work on those. Because with those, it's difficult to parent. Because those come in the way of proper, wise decision making. So for parents, I would say work on them. Work on yourself to be the best version of yourself. There are so many clips out there, you apply it to yourself. Once when you're the best version of yourself, you become this beautiful role model for your child to emulate. You also make wiser decisions, even though the decision may not be with your value system, but a decision that is useful for your child, because your mind is clear. Then, second aspect is how you form your bond with your child. Now, in our cultures, we have seen in certain segments of society, parents refrain from showing physical attention, physical affection. They prefer to give things. They send them to tuition, to classes, but hugging, praising, even looking at the child and talking is not that encouraged. It's a bit odd in our society. That is actually not nice. It's abnormal. A child needs that physical touch and connection. So if an adult is not that way inclined, please think twice. Like that student who told me, in the bus, she said that teacher looked at my eyes and smiled. Nobody had done that. Even my parents. She touched my head and said, Puta kohomada. That stirred something in me, and I thought I will make it in life, but not in the school. And he has his own business now. Proudly going and doing, he takes freelance work. So those changes adult could do has a huge impact on your child. Now for the youth who is looking into this, you are actually in the throes of so much of data sets. We have our traditional culture, which has very beautiful things in part of it. Plus, you are exposed to lots of other cultures. So, to be really thinking as to, well, it's good to know what's happening in Australia or Sweden, Finland, but do not only take what is shown in social media as the only truth. There's more to it than that. Now for people, I know one of my friends' children, they went to one of the Western countries to do undergraduate studies. Before going, I thought that was the best place to go to. But once they go there, somewhat racial discrimination is there. It's extremely cold. You know, you don't have... So then you see the truth. So before you compare and contrast, think of all options in every society so that you don't make wrong decisions which may not be that looked down on in our culture. Every culture has positive things, you see. And again, in order for a youth to make those decisions, the parenting has to be very stable. So we find, Theruni, young people coming to us, and I'm amazed at how wonderful our young people talk about the wisdom they have, even if the parenting hasn't been great. And I always wonder, if their parents were better than that, how fantastic their decision making. So young people have the capacity to make decisions, but we might not be emphasizing that because their decisions might not go with what the parents want.
Thank you, Professor Piyanjali, for once again offering such profound insights, not only just into the psychological aspect, but also into the realities of our Sri Lankan youth as they navigate culture as well as their own identities. And to our viewers, we hope tonight's conversation opened your eyes a little bit more on how we can think about supporting young people at home, in schools, and within various other social constructs as well, with empathy as well as understanding. Thank you very much for joining us tonight on Face to Face. Take care. Good night.